Hey guys, and welcome to today's episode of Give It the Beans. Now, I've not recorded one in a wee while, so I would like to reintroduce for the third time on the podcast the one and only Clara. How are we doing?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Just like Narnia, where I stay. I'm sure it's the same where we stay.
Exactly.
Now, for those of you that have listened to the podcast for a while, you know that Clara is a coach on the team. I'm sure that you all listen to her vlogs. If not, after listening to this podcast, you will go do that and check out the YouTube channel. But for those that are unaware of what you've been up to, maybe they've been hiding under a rock the past few weeks or months, should I say, can you just tell the listeners just what you've been up to? Give us an update since the last time you're on the podcast.
Oh gosh, it has been it's been pretty much a year. The last podcast we recorded together was just at the start of the lockdown in March 2020. And since then, I feel like I've been to the moon and back. So I started a full-time job in January 2020. And then in March, officially started working under the VW Physique brand. And over lockdown and over the last year, I have felt like I've been relentlessly working to build my reputation, to work with my clients, to build my client base, take care of them, to the point where I have only just started working as fully self-employed. So I quit my job, and yesterday, Monday, was my first day as self-employed. So yeah, it's been busy. Amongst that, I've had like within my full-time job about 60 different roles, just because I kept getting redeployed because of lockdown. And since kind of like December, I've finally started to prioritize a bit more of my psychology training, which is currently sort of my main focus alongside online coaching. So it's been busy to say the least, but we're here now and it feels like a breath of fresh air, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for those of you listening, Clara is a very, very incredibly humble individual and probably hasn't realised how well she's done as a new coach, as a new online coach, with the gyms being shut for 7 months in the total of almost 10 months she's been under the brand. So realistically, gyms have been open for you 3.5 months maybe in that time period.
Fortunately, yeah, something like that.
and to then build up your reputation to be able to go fully self-employed to then focus on your psychology stuff as well as coaching, I think that's an incredible achievement, something that you should be very, very proud of.
Appreciate it. Yeah, teamwork makes teamwork though, right?
Absolutely. For those of you who don't know, Clara edits a lot of the article, well, every article that me and Ali write because we are illiterate. No, she's just a bit better at that stuff. But in regards to obviously sticking to her strengths, she is the one to go to in regards to sports psychology and is currently, now please correct me if I'm wrong, the title is trainee sports and exercise psychologist. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, that's
Cool.
what I'm right now.
So pretty much that means she knows her shit. Right, and that's the reason why a lot of maybe Clara's articles will be about psychology, and mine will be so far from that. Today's one I wrote about, I'm sure I just sent you, it was about highly branching cyclic direction. But anyway, I digress. I'm going off on a tangent again. Today's podcast is all kind of about the current climate, we should say, current lockdown, mental health, mindset, etc., etc. And I know that you're the same as me in regards to the sort of feedback we've been getting from clients and just what a lot of people are asking on Instagram, just in regards to their sort of workouts, kind of feeling a bit draining on sort of training from home. Now, you made some great points on the web, the videos webinar last week. So what I'd love you to do is just give the listeners a bit of an insight to, what advice would you give if there are workouts are draining from home, and just elaborate on some of the stuff you said on that webinar. I think it would be fab.
So yeah, I suppose the first way to preface this is that it's normal to find maybe workouts in this lockdown a bit more difficult than the first time round, purely because we're now in a context where this has been going on for 11 months, and you'll get this as much as I do, people just going, oh, I'm so tired and I don't know why. And then you pull back and you go, well, we have been in a constant flux of change for the last 12 months. Like, no wonder you're exhausted. And for a lot of people where workouts were a space to sort of clock out and just have time for themselves, they're now having to accommodate that. back in their home. It's not like they can even go out into the garden unless they're like, real Scottish, thick skin. I certainly can't do that. And having to reaccommodate that and just lose the space that you had, or that time that you had for yourself, it's incredibly difficult. And a lot of people are saying that they're not feeling motivated to work out. And, they tend to ask us a lot as coaches, well, how do you do it? And it always comes back to what motivates you really. Motivation, we think it's this elusive thing that comes, and once we have it, it's there forever. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Like, you cannot rely on motivation per se. It's the building of habits over such a long period of time that allows you to then just do a behavior without even thinking about it. And what helps us in that is the more we see that behavior as being in alignment with the things that we truly believe in, which tend to be, for most of us, our values. So when we can link the behaviors that we're trying to be motivated for to our core values, actually cracking on with the behavior, which is exercise or dietary adherence or whatever it might be, becomes so much easier, because it's not a matter of like, can I be bothered? Can I not be bothered? It's more a matter of like, who I am and what do I stand for? And when we take it down to that, it doesn't really become a question of like, will I work out or will I not? It's more a question of like, when am I going to do it and how am I going to do it? So it's very much about identifying what your values are, and then being able to link those to the goals that you've set for yourself, or identifying the values and then setting goals that are linked or that are in line with, with your physique development and with your nutrition goals, for example.
So because someone's just heard that and still doesn't understand. So if you were able to, I'd say, if you give me an example of maybe perhaps yourself and how you're able to link that. And then what about just like a client who, because we know that not everyone is Clara Swedlund, bikini girl, fucking loves giving it the beans and whatnot. So let's maybe relate it to yourself, who's a, bikini pro competitor, to then more of like a sort of Gen Pop style client. So if we give that first example for yourself, talk us through what that means in regards to your values and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So for example, the way I sort of identified my values, and I tend to do this like once every 6 months, every 12 months, it's just like online, you can find lists of values. And I think we spoke about this in the last podcast, but you can find a list of values, pick your top 6 or your top 4, right? And once you've got those in mind, which for me, I've got them right in front of me, I'm going to link exercise to a value of mine, which is hard work and commitment. Now, hard work and commitment is something that's incredibly important to me. It's a way that I live my life, that if I agree to something, if I say yes, I'm going to take it till the end. I am going to commit to it, and I'm going to put everything that I can into whatever it is I'm doing. It doesn't matter if it's a relationship, if it is working out, if it's dietary adherence, if it's, building a business. If I say yes, I'm fully going to commit to it. So on the days where I really, really don't want to work out, I'm getting the rage because I'm stuck at home and I don't have the access to like the kit that I want to have access to, or like it's fucking disgusting outside and I need to go get my steps or whatever it might be. I think, right, well, maybe not directly now because it's such a habit, but I can go back to my values and say, right, well, if hard work and commitment is important to me, then by choosing to slack off right now, I'm doing myself a disservice. And the reason I might feel disappointed isn't because like, oh, I didn't work out and like, oh, I might, not make the gains that I want to make. It's because hard work is so important to me that I want to see myself acting out the things that I, practicing what I essentially preach and what I believe in. And I suppose that's how I take it to myself. For some other person, maybe hard work and commitment is important to them, but it's not the most important thing to them. Maybe they really, value personal growth and learning, something like that. So the way that they could maybe reframe it or look at the same question, how can I get myself motivated to work out right now? If you pose it as a challenge of, well, what can I learn by pushing myself to do something that I really don't feel like doing right now? What's the lesson going to be on the other side when gyms reopen, for me to look back on the situation and be like, fuck yeah, I learned something from that lockdown. I'm a better person now. I've grown as a human. For me to look back on it, would it help to have not missed a workout on days that I know I could have pushed myself. And by thinking about it in those terms and seeing how those small little daily actions can support you feeling in alignment with your values, it's almost like the motivation. You then go, well, it's not really a question of like yes or no, it's a question of how and when. So it's tying it a bit more like almost like jumping into a helicopter and taking, bird's eye view, looking down and going, right, what's the bigger picture here? It's not, oh, I can't be bothered right now. And I'm not saying that's everybody, but, take yourself out of that situation, think about it in the long term. And yeah, missing one workout, like the world won't end if you miss one workout. But what is that? What does that speak to at a bigger scale? And if you are really struggling to motivate yourself, I would question whether like this is really what you want. And if you're maybe like working up because you want to please somebody else, and if you start to ask these difficult and challenging questions, I totally appreciate that it's not an easy conversation to have with yourself, but if you start to prod a bit deeper, I'm sure you'll find a way in which it makes sense to continue doing what you're doing. Same with dietary adherence, same with like choosing to not overeat 7 days a week, for example, choosing to have the meals even when you're not hungry. Like, you can tie any behavior and any goal that you have to your values. You just have to spend a bit more time thinking about it. So if you're struggling with motivation, maybe it's not about, oh, how do I get more motivated? Maybe it's, well, what are my values? And how does this goal make sense according to my values? Does that kind of explain it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in a roundabout way, what I was waiting to get at, but you think you already answered it, was maybe this period is like making people identify that they don't really like training as much as they thought they did, or they don't really kind of want to step on stage or in front of a camera like they thought they did.
Yeah.
Because they've got to the point where they kind of go, all right, well, yeah, actually, I actually care about these way above than I do training, so they're my values, then that makes sense. I just thought it'd be good to put it in just layman's terms, because as I said, that's what this podcast is all about. Because I know like me and you, we get it, we understand. But if someone kind of comes on board or is listening, that maybe it's the first time listening to this podcast. Hopefully it's not, but if it is, thank you, welcome. But yeah, I think that really does sort of put it in good context. But the one other thing that I think people are getting worked up on, especially ones that are still training, that are, maybe perhaps today they're not squatting outside because there's about a foot of snow, but they're doing it in their living room. Like I think there's a lot of just uncertainty. A lot of people getting themselves worked up about when the gyms will open, if they'll open, the date they'll open, if the pubs will open first and whatnot. And they're probably sort of kind of maybe wondering how they're going to manage the next sort of couple of months or the next few weeks of uncertainty, waking up every day kind of like, oh my God, what's this latest thing on Instagram? Oh my God, what's the latest thing on the Daily Mail or whatever it is? And I know that you've got quite a bit of knowledge about uncertainty and whatnot. So you've written a few articles as well. If people want, please go check out Clara's articles on the VW Physique website. But for those that are listening to this podcast, maybe could you give them a little bit of advice of maybe how they would maybe cope a little bit better with that uncertainty?
Definitely. So it comes back not to like harp on about values, but values can really, really help us manage this uncertainty because they facilitate a way of thinking that almost like enables us to be more accepting of the moment and almost try and be more flexible with the way that we think. So it's almost like if we take us back to sort of pre-first lockdown, pre-COVID world, the way that we maybe thought that the world operated was pretty fixed. So this is how this works, and this is how it always is, and this is my routine, and there's no alternative. And what lockdown and what COVID has really forced us to do and reckon with is becoming more flexible in our way of thinking. And a lot of that is simply learning to accept uncertainty and accept that we, as much as we have an illusion, we can't control the world, but we are very much in control of our behaviors. So if we take it back to those values, if we can identify what the things that we value are, we can then set value informed goals or behaviors, which is what we've just touched upon, in alignment with these 4 values that I've identified. What can I set as something I would like to be currently doing that makes sense with these values? And from that, what we can start to think about is, how does that enable us to be in contact with the present moment? Because this uncertainty is very much a reflection of most of our inability to just be present in the here and now. So many of us, and I'll be the first one who does this, are living in like the future, the worry that, oh my God, what's going to happen? Like, what's Nicola Sturgeon going to say next? What's Boris going to say? And I mean, this is something I've been working on for the last freaking year, and I'm still working on it, because it doesn't come organically to me at all. But how can my values and my value-informed behaviors help me stay in contact with the present moment? Because when we bring the focus to the present moment, a lot of the uncertainty almost is like eliminated in many ways. If we think, rather than like, holy fuck, will I be in a gym in the next 2 months? It's more like, well, right, let's bring it back. What can I do now so that it doesn't actually matter if I'm in the gym in 2 months' time? What can I do here and now, in alignment with the values, with those goals, with the behaviors, that's maybe going to help me stay committed to the present moment? And the more we facilitate, the more we allow ourselves to think about the present moment and take it back to the here and now, we just see how these worries just gradually drop. Because I mean, I always say this to myself and to clients too, is that worrying is like, it's like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but it gets you nowhere. So think about it in that way. What can you do here and now that's going to enable you to just stay present and eliminate part of that worry? And what that then, almost as a next step, allows you to do is just go, cool, well, I can't actually control the past. I can't control the future. So I'm just going to have to fucking accept that I'm here and I'm now. And actually, it helps us stay more accountable when we accept that we have no control over the past and the future, but that we do have a degree of control over what we can do here and now. It becomes much easier to stop worrying about that uncertainty, because we know that we can control kind of the next hour, the next 2 hours, or that there are tools that we can develop to enable us to do that. So that allows us to create that flexibility that I was talking about before, and not be as fixated or as fused with our thoughts and our beliefs about the world. Oh, I should be able to do this, and I should be able to go on holiday. Like, don't get me wrong, it's fucking frustrating. Like, I don't know when I'm going to see my family next, right? It's fucking annoying. But rather than looking at those thoughts and just like jumping on them and being like, fuck, I'm raging, like this is so annoying, if you take that step back, if you accept the here and now, if you just think, right, well, instead of being upset and angry about not seeing my family, about not being in a gym, I can call my parents on the phone today, I can do my homework, but I can do whatever it is that I need to do, that's going to allow me to not separate myself from that negative thought, from that uncertain thought, because it forces you to be like, lights in your face, fuck, what can I do now, rather than like, oh, this and that, and spinning thoughts in your head. And ultimately that just enables us to, like I said before, kind of take that bird's eye view and look at your life from like a broader context. We all think we're the fucking most important thing on this planet. We think the world revolves around us and our issues. I am like that, but I'm afraid it's not that way. Like, I think it's so unfair that gyms have been closed for this length of time, but the world doesn't evolve around my goals. Unfortunately, I can't control that. So taking it back those steps, if I come back to my values, come back to those behaviors, if I think about how can I accept the situation, if I stop, attaching to those negative thoughts, I can see the current situation from a broader perspective and just accept that gyms will reopen, like this shit will be over. And what can I do now, actually, that's gonna remove some of that distress and help me, still work towards my goals. Because, the time will pass anyway, right? Easier said than done, of course, but that's why it's a practice. I don't even know if I answered the question directly, but hopefully those steps can help break it down.
I think more than answered that question, Clara. This is why I got Clara on the podcast. I was like, Clara, just come on the podcast, just speak for an hour. um, I also think it's maybe good to add in here as well that there might be a lot of, especially females out there, that I know there's many that look up to you, especially in the team on Instagram, that they'll go, oh, but that's fine because Clara's badass and she's fourth member of Destiny's Child, whatever. When I think you could easily admit that there's times where you have a little bit of a worry and you'll message me about, like, I'm sure you're messaging me worrying about the US president-elect and whatnot. But the thing is, you have a very good ability to worry about it for a little bit, and you'll choose the time to worry about it, and then thereafter just stop worrying about it. So just a shameless plug. It's not for my article, it's for yours. You put on the site, I think it was kind of coping with COVID. It was like worry time, or something like that. So if anyone's not read those or hasn't listened to the first podcast, do you want to kind of just elaborate on what that means?
Yeah, definitely. It's a technique that I came across when first lockdown happened, and it served me so well. Because if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, it's fine, you can just switch off. I can't switch off. I really struggle to switch off. I am like, I see the thought and I'm on the thought and I write it till the end. So it's really it's taken a lot of work, a lot of conscious work for me to be able to separate that. But what the worry time technique sort of proposes we do is that we set a set amount of time a day to worry about the things that are bothering us right now. And by limiting it and by containing it, we can make sure that those anxieties and those thoughts don't kind of disturb our day-to-day functioning. They don't impact on our ability to, live a normal life, like focus on our job, do the things that we need to do, because it's so easy to be completely trapped in your thoughts, to, get that paralysis by over-analysis. There's some days I remember during first lockdown, I remember once I woke up, for some stupid reason, didn't follow my worry time technique. And I looked at the news at like 5 o'clock in the morning in bed, and that set me off for the whole day. Like I was fucked. So anyway, back to the worry time technique. What it proposes is that you set a maximum 30-minute time slot during your day dedicated to worry. Like this is your worry time. And what I suggest you do is that you place that worry time at a moment that isn't like too close to waking up or too close to going to bed. So you've got time before and after to digest that information and sort of like move past it. And it's not just like hitting you first thing in the morning that it ruined your day, because it can happen. Take it from me. And so what you do is you find that time during the day, and you need to be quite strict with yourself and saying, right, during this time, that's when I'm going to read the news. That's when I'm going to go on Twitter and doom scroll, as I call it, just like looking at this shit just fucking blow up. And this is the time where I'm going to voice those concerns to other people, maybe share those worries with other people. And also, out with that time, I don't want to hear anything about the coronavirus. If I do come across this information, I'm just going to park it away, and I'm going to be quite vocal about the fact that this is out with my worry time. So during the day then, say for example, so my worry time tends to be around 5:30 p.m. because then I've still got a few hours, 5:30 to 6 o'clock, because then I've still got a few hours before I actually go to bed. And by that point, if any shit has hit the fan in the world, I will know about it. Like the US is awake, Nicola's made her announcement, like everything's kind of happened already. So I don't have to then check it again. So at that time, that's when I read the news. That's when I kind of catch up with everything. And if I find myself thinking about worrying thoughts, if I find myself concerned about anything else during the day, I park it till my worry time. So at the beginning of lockdown, I used to just write it in my notes on my phone, be like, oh, worried about, traveling, worried about, spread of the virus, worried about number of cases in, the town that my parents live in, for example. And I would just write down all those little things that I wanted to Google there and then, and I could have spent 30 minutes of time just sitting there, just, panicking, but I park them. And when it comes to my worry time, I come back to those thoughts and I go, maybe half of the time I'm just like, oh, well, that was a random thought. why was I worried about that? Move past it. Or that's when I sort of sit down and read the news. And for me, the most important part was setting those boundaries with the people around me. So Jack, for example, my partner, he used to, read the news on like the cases, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, or however many thousands of cases. And I just had to say, no, past 6 p.m., I don't want to know about it. Like, don't tell me the number of people who have died, because I don't want to know. I don't even know what that information means. And I don't want to know about it at 8:30 when I'm about to go to my bed, because that's going to keep me up all night. And then I'm going to be on the fucking BBC trying to read more about it and just like not really comprehending any of that information. So it's just a way for you to park your thoughts and really set boundaries. And ultimately, the goal of that isn't to stop yourself from worrying. It's more just to enable you to live your life. It's worry can, it can just take over completely. And during the last year, I think for most of us, we've come to face to face with a lot of our mental health struggles, a lot of things that maybe we didn't realize that were bothering us because we were busy being busy. And when you're busy being busy, it's so easy to ignore small things that come up, small like, oh, this maybe doesn't feel too right, but I'm just going to fucking ignore it. And the worry time technique really does, it doesn't have to be applied to coronavirus, but it does allow you to set very strict boundaries that can protect your mental health, because you're not dismissing the worries, you're still addressing them, but you're giving it a dedicated time and you're giving it a limited time. And it also almost like incentivizes you to go, actually, I don't need to worry about this now because I'm going to worry about it later. So let me just crack on with my day and I'll come back to it. And sometimes when you come back to it, it's not even a concern anymore. It's just like, like I said, that fleeting thought. If you think about it like a car, cars whizzing past on a motorway, you see the worry thought and you're in the car already and you're speeding down the motorway. What we want to think about is just watch it go by and just say, yeah, I'll come to it later. I'll hop on that van later. Yeah. And like I said, you sometimes don't even have to come back to it because it's in the moment and then it's gone.
Yeah. I know we hadn't discussed adding it in, but I think it was just really good addition just to remind people, because I'm sure that people listen to the first podcast today were like, yeah, it's great, but maybe just forgotten about it, a wee reminder. And so hopefully it can kind of help get them through the next sort of, well, we hope a couple of months before the gym's open, but yeah, it's as you said, we go back to that uncertainty and whatnot, not knowing. Everyone's sort of waiting with bated breath on big Nicola or big Boris or whatever you are in the world's announcement. The only people I don't feel bad for are the listeners in Australia that are like, party, and like everything's open and they're living life. Because there's a bunch. When I looked on the website, not the website, the statistics page, it's pretty cool. But anyway, I digress. The one other thing I know you've been asked about was for people that have perhaps been feeling just kind of slightly bogged down, you could say, a little bit like maybe a little bit depressed about the whole situation. It doesn't need to be necessarily just about the gyms, because I'm sure there's maybe people out there that they have the equipment and they've maybe got a sick gym in their garage or whatnot, garage gains as such, but maybe they're still feeling a little bit slightly depressed, a little bit bogged down. Is there anything that you perhaps haven't covered already? Because you've covered a fuckload, and I'm sure what you've already said relates to all that so much, but is there anything else that you could add or say to those guys listening? Because the majority of them, they don't want to tell people that they feel like that. They sort of kind of keep it reclusive, keep it within. I know a lot of guys do. Guys within our sort of brand are pretty good at opening up, but for the ones out there that are kind of, not just guys, but guys and girls that are putting on that front of, everything's okay, but inside they're maybe a little bit down, what would you say?
Well, the first thing is that if you do have any concerns, always speak to your GP. That's always the first point of call. If you're unsure whether what you're experiencing might be depression, might not be, it doesn't have to, you don't have to be in tears in the middle of a crisis to reach out to someone. Always speak to your GP first. But there's a lot of things that you can do, especially to simply just understand how you're feeling a bit more. I always say that it all starts with awareness. And if you've been feeling a little bit low, but you can't really put your finger on it, maybe you just need to turn towards that emotion and sort of like let it in, even though it might feel like you're opening Pandora's box and it's not going to be an easy conversation with yourself. And if you listen to any of my content, I always talk about, inviting negative Nancy or Debbie Downer in for a coffee when they come knocking at the door, rather than shutting it off. It is important to sort of have that conversation and go, right, well, what's going on? Maybe with a new worry time technique, that's where you can put that conversation. But often we just want to consider, okay, well, what are the thoughts that are coming into my mind right now? Is it just like a feeling of what's the point in keeping going, with whatever I'm trying to do? Like, what's the point in keeping going with training, even at the more extreme points with life? But if that is your concern, please do phone your GP or Samaritans. But I'm talking about more like low feelings in general.
Yeah.
Understanding what the thought is and being quite specific about the thought is the first point. And it could be multiple thoughts. So being aware in the moment of like, okay, what thought just came into my mind? Because those thoughts affect our feelings. And from that thought, we then need to address, how did that make me feel? What's the emotion? Am I angry? Am I frustrated? Am I really upset? Am I distressed? It's not just, oh, I feel shit. Like, I feel shit has many different colors. So try and identify what it is that you feel, and also identify how strongly you feel it. For example, wake up today and it's snowing and I go, oh, for fuck's sake, that's annoying. But I feel annoyed, but I'm like 10% annoyed. Like, it's really not that big a deal. Yeah. So identify the emotion, but identify also how strongly you feel that emotion. If there's any physical sensations that come with it too, try and see how it makes you feel. For some people, being anxious makes them completely lose their appetite. They feel nauseous at the thought of food. Other people just like are super hungry, could like eat the house down. Other people feel exhausted and they just want to go back to bed. So just think about what the thought is that kind of triggers you to be like, oh my God, I feel some kind of way. What is it that you feel? How strongly do you feel it? And how does your body respond? Does your heart rate go up? Do your palms get sweaty? Whatever it might be. And from there, try and identify, okay, well, what's your knee-jerk reaction? Like, what's the immediate behavior that you want to do, or what does that then lead you to do? So for example, if we think about the likes of dietary adherence in the context of being super anxious, so you're feeling mega anxious and your knee-jerk reaction is eat your feelings. For example, a lot of people develop that coping mechanism, right? So that's a knee-jerk reaction. But what happens after that? What's the consequence of that? Doesn't matter, not in terms of your goals, but how do you feel? What's the thought that comes after that? Like, what keeps that cycle going? So if the thought is, what's the fucking point in going on with all this? Because I'm sick of it. The feeling is feeling really low, and the behavior is, in this case, sacking off a workout. How do you, like, what's the thought afterwards? Do you tell yourself, oh, I'm a lazy piece of shit? How does that make you feel? Absolutely awful. What's the behavior? Sacking on the workout because you feel like shit. You can very easily see how these things can spiral. So identifying that behavior and the thoughts and being very specific about them can then allow you to almost, again, take that bird's eye view and just ask yourself, okay, well, if someone I really care for was discussing this with me, if they were saying, oh, I'm feeling this and I'm feeling really low and I just don't see the point, and like, I just kind of want to give up, and it's just, it feels pretty pointless and I feel awful about it because I keep skipping my workouts. If that is you, what would you say to that person? To comfort them, it is very likely that you'd be, quite calm about it. You wouldn't be aggressive. You'd be quite understanding, and you would think about a solution to the problem. Rather than just saying, oh, pat on the back, it's fine, just sack the workouts forever, like, you won't die, you'll get back into it. Try and be a bit more proactive. So reframe the feeling, reframe the thought. Okay, maybe I feel really low and it feels pointless because it's been going on for a really long time, but I know it won't be forever, and I know that I do enjoy training. So what can I do to maybe help me get back into the swing of things so that cycle, that low sort of negative spiraling cycle, is broken and I can create a different cycle? And you don't have to almost set the same expectations on yourself now than you maybe did when gyms were open and when everything felt fine, like pre-COVID, because the context is different. Like, context really matters, and all behavior makes sense in context. So don't bully yourself into trying to apply the same demand on yourself when the context is wildly different. And just because you modify your goal, and just because you modify your approach to the goal, it doesn't mean you're lowering the standard. It just means you're adapting. It means, going back to what we were saying before, it means you're allowing yourself to be flexible. And yeah, maybe before you were training 5 days a week, you were doing 10,000 steps a day and you were fucking smashing your cardio. Or maybe now, guess what? Maybe if you've not trained for 2 weeks, maybe going out for a walk 3 times a week is where you need to start. Maybe that's the good enough benchmark, and you're not lowering the standard. You're just giving yourself permission to rebuild that confidence in yourself. Because if you say, right, I'm going to go from nothing to 5 days a week training from home to smashing my steps and doing my cardio, you're literally setting yourself up to failure. You need to build momentum for yourself. Like, do yourself a favor. It's not even about ego. It's just about context. Like, the context is different. Allow yourself to operate in a context, and always think, what would I say to someone else? And even though, like, that works for a lot of us, and then, I'm like, okay, what would I say to someone else? And then I tell myself, yeah, but it doesn't apply to you. The demons in my head are like, not you. It's being able to turn to that little demon or that voice and say, no, fuck you. It does apply to me. I am allowed to do this. And often just like sharing how you feel with someone else, bouncing those ideas of somebody else, can also help, because they can confirm, oh yeah, that demon needs to fuck off. This applies to you. And they might be able to see it from an outsider's perspective, where if that person knows you, they can also offer, another example of a time where you were able to overcome a difficult situation, where you were able to overcome a really low period of time. It might be completely unrelated to lockdown or whatever it is that you're going through right now. But when someone else, or even when you can reflect on, like, oh yeah, that time 5 years ago, I had a really shit 6 months, but I got through it. I've just had a really shit 6 months. I can probably do it again. What helped me then? What can I do now? So it's so difficult to convey, but as hard as it is, and as much as we really want to hold on to that moment and like, I feel shit and throw a tantrum, once you've moved past that, just take a break, take a broader view, and really try and be like your own best cheerleader, so to speak. Really try and find ways that have helped you in the past that can maybe help you now, and think about reframing those issues that you're coming across with. And if you're not sure, speak to someone. And there's many professionals out there that can really help you specifically kind of challenge those thoughts in a more structured way.
Yeah. I think in addition to that, you said, I don't know if this same scenario applies. I remember from one of the webinars you had said that, people that were feeling like, oh, I can't be bothered, and then instantly flipping on its head saying, well, if I miss my workout, how does it make me going to feel?
Yeah.
I know I'm not saying it in the right way. Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's another good way to look at it, is that when you are feeling low, or like when you're maybe you can't really be bothered with your workout, or whatever it is, I always like to ask, okay, well, will Clara of tomorrow be grateful for the decision I'm about to make now, or will I regret it? So for example, yesterday I woke up 5 o'clock in the morning. I was like, yes, first day of self-employed. I got out of bed and I had a fucking pounding headache, and I was like, got up, made my coffee. The smell of coffee made me gag. And I was like, right, if I try and push through a workout right now, I'm going to be fucking raging, because this is going to make me really ill. Like, I know I'm just going to be burning the candle even further. And that question, will I regret going to bed, or will I be grateful for the fact I went back to bed? 100% grateful. Other side, will I regret doing this workout, or will I be grateful for doing this workout? Trust me, I knew I would regret that workout. But the amount of times that I've gone into the gym on prep, for example, or even like during the first lockdown, that I had like cardio to do after a workout, and I'm just like, I don't want to do it. Like, I don't want to fucking do this right now. But then you go, right, will I be grateful, or will I regret? not doing this. And you go, right, well, I don't want to do it tomorrow. So I better fucking do it now. I know that once it's done, I've been through the situation before. I know once it's done, I'll be so glad that I did it. I'm going to be so glad that at least I tried. And if I do, 5 minutes and it's just a no from me, then I at least I tried. Then I know. But most of the time, you do 5 minutes. Or like I said to some clients, if you're really not feeling a workout, go in, do one warm-up set of the first exercise. And if you're really still not feeling it, sack it. It's never happened that someone sacks it. They just crack on with it.
Yeah.
So again, just giving yourself permission to ask that question, and really that it does allow us to pin it down into, am I really needing a rest, or am I just not really feeling it now, but I know I can do it. So it's almost like an easier way for you to even self-assess. Can be a home workout, but even when you're at the gym, if you're on prep, whatever it might be, it's a good way to bring it back to the here and now and be like, right, let's take away the bullshit filter. How am I feeling? Do I want this? Do I not want this? Why do I want this? Back to the values, full circle. So yeah, it all makes sense in its own weird way.
Yeah, no, 100% it does. I thought when you were talking about the webinar, I was like, that's a really good way to look at it. So yeah, I just thought add it in because it's just going to benefit anyone that is listening. Now, just in conscious time, I'm aware that you were asked a specific question for this podcast. Do you want to tell listeners, well, what was the question, and then give them your answer, and then we're up.
Yeah. So the question was around the use of MyFitnessPal and meal plans. So lately, not even like super recently, it's kind of been a running theme on social media that using MyFitnessPal or meal plans can be a way of like promoting disordered eating patterns. That there's not enough education around how to use MyFitnessPal as like a tool, and that people can become very latched onto it. Same with a meal plan. And I think two different people asked the same question, which is quite curious. But the question was more aimed at like, what do I think about that? And I suppose that it's like everything. Every tool that exists out there can be used and abused if you don't use it, if you're not using it in an educated way, in a supported way. So for example, if we consider MyFitnessPal is so useful to so many people. It really opens many people's eyes around like nutrition education. Like even just most of us have, when we don't know anything about food and nutrition, reading a food label means absolutely fuck all. Like nobody knows how to interpret all that information. What am I looking at per 100 grams? How do I compare 30 grams of Cocoa Pop cereal serving to like 50 grams of like Curiously Cinnamon? Like it makes no sense at all. So what MyFitnessPal does is it really allows us to learn in quite a eye-opening and painful way, more often than not, what is actually in the food that we eat, whether you're just looking at calories or whether you're also looking at macronutrient breakdown. It's such a useful tool. Now, like everything, that can be used and abused, but which is why I think that educating people is the core of any kind of training education that we do, that any kind of nutrition education that we do with our clients, and just in general with the fitness industry. Same with like if we started saying that tracking cardio with your Fitbit is going to promote disordered exercise patterns. I mean, for some people perhaps, and you can see it, but it is a very, very likely, and I might be completely wrong, but it's very likely that those people would have developed that irrespective of Fitbit. Like eating disorders existed before MyFitnessPal did. Yeah. They existed before meal plans did. So it's not about that. And I genuinely don't think it facilitates it. It's just that it's an important conversation to have with people. And that's a responsibility that coaches have, to assess and also look for signs that just might be a bit concerning from their clients, and knowing that if they don't know what to do with that information, it's okay. They're not expected to be eating disorder experts either. So I personally don't think that MyFitnessPal promotes disordered eating. I do think that it's a tool that needs to be learn that you just need to learn how to use it. And a lot of the times, like even for those of us who are used to using it and like have not much attachment to it, like we can kind of, we use it because it's useful, but that's about it. It can be bastardized like anything. I mean, I know that during prep, there's sometimes where I'm like, right, I am literally going to macro hoard so I can have this chocolate bar at the end of the day because it's my birthday. It's useful in that way.
First time you tell me about this, Clara.
It's my macros though, which is precisely, it's that same approach of like everything and anything can be taken to its extreme and used in a useful or in a non-useful way. And it's the same with meal plans. There's a lot of like bashing meal plans. It doesn't teach people how to eat. Well, I'm really sorry, but like your fucking generic British diet is fucked. People will be lucky if they eat a single vegetable in a day. So for some people, if they literally, I mean, depending on what their background might have been, maybe even growing up, they never had structured meals during the day. Maybe since becoming adults and, studying or living independently, they've not had that structure and they've just not had to practice these, regular meals, regular healthy meals. So I don't think meal plans are bad at all because they can really provide someone with a foundation and a really good understanding of like, oh, that's what that means. And I find, at least with my clients, that providing them with like macros, like a macro plan, and then translating that macro plan into meal plan and having them both in front of them, they can really start making those links so that ultimately the goal is education. The goal is I don't have to keep updating your meal plan unless you want me to, because you've actually figured out how to understand macros. You know what you enjoy doing. You're doing a consistent, eating plan. And I don't have to tell you what to do because I've empowered you through the meal plan and through the macros to be able to use them to your advantage. Again, the end of the spectrum in a normal curve, they're so small and the likelihood of coming across it is quite rare. But like anything, just as a coach, because it's coaches asking this question, just be mindful of the signs. If you're not sure of the signs, you're allowed to ask a difficult question to a client. They don't have to answer, but you're allowed to ask. And if you don't know what to do, there's so many referral pathways that you can have that conversation with a client about. And don't try and be a problem solver, like every problem solver. Your role as a coach and personal trainer is to help a person in whatever fitness goals that they might have. You're not expected to be a psychologist. You're not expected to have all these other skills. So stop trying to fucking pretend to have them. Like, do yourself a favor, like keep your clients safe. You're probably doing more damage than good. And it's such a huge risk for anyone to undertake when a client presents with like certain issues that they just don't know how to deal with, but they don't do anything about it. Like, it's so risky. So to answer that question, I don't think meal plans on MyFitnessPal are bad at all. It's how you use them and making sure that it's a two-way communication, not that you're letting go, of your clients, giving them a meal plan and off you fuck with that, good luck. But it's true. So a lot of people do that. Just make sure that you're always communicating and touching base and asking how, asking questions about how they're engaging with it and how they're finding it. Be curious, and your clients will be more than happy to be open with you about it.
Yeah, that's wicked. Now, I think that has been an episode full of knowledge bombs. I think it really adds to the one we did the first lockdown, because I'm sure there was some stuff in today's episode that we maybe didn't touch on, or maybe we've touched on it today in a slightly different way. Hopefully it's a bit more, it's just as easily digestible, I'm sure it is, as that first one. But if not, I would recommend anyone who's listening to this, go listen to the first one, then go on the website and then read everything that Clara's written. Especially if you are sort of struggling through this period. She puts it in layman's terms. She's got good grammar, way better grammar than me. And I'm sure that that'll help. But as a side note, if there's anyone listening who would like to quiz Clara or hear from her in more detail, I'm sure you're more than happy for them to drop in your DMs, right?
Yeah, please do reach out on on Instagram or whatever it might be. It's really nice to get messages from someone who's listened to the podcast, even like if you tag me on your story, or whatever it might be, and even just letting me know what you took away from it, and if there's anything you'd like me to talk a bit more about. I do put out a lot of psychology content, but not as much as I would have liked to, just because I've been so busy with my job. But it's something that now that I've got more time, I really want to start helping people understand a bit more, especially how psychology applies to our fitness journeys. Because for many people, intuitively it makes sense, but they seem like such separate worlds. And I really want to help people, make those links and really understand that. So if you've got any questions, if you want me to elaborate on anything, if you want to share something with me, do let me know. And we can always, chat about it in more depth, of course.
Fantastic. Now, if you're listening, I think I speak for me, Clara, everyone at VW Physique, where we say, give it the beans.